Rise, fall.
Hello and welcome back to our podcast.
If you look at the Eastern Mediterranean between, say, 1200 and 1100 BC, you are looking at one of history's greatest and most abrupt mysteries.
It's total disappearance.
Right. Across 1,000 kilometers, from Greece all the way to Turkey and down the coast, an entire system of civilization just collapsed. It wiped societies, the mighty Hittites, the city of Utgarit, the Minoans, the Mycenaean Greeks, completely off the map.
And the speed of it is, well, it's staggering. As the historian Robert Drews pointed out, we're talking about a period of maybe 40 to 50 years where almost every single significant city in that world was destroyed.
Just gone.
Utterly gone. Many were never occupied again. And when we say recovery, we're not talking about a few decades. For some of these areas, it took nearly 1,000 years to get back to that level.
1,000 years, that's apocalyptic. Okay, so our mission today is clear. Let's really unpack this. We're going to dive into the source material you shared and explore how so many interconnected societies could fall apart all at once, and look at the fiercely debated theories behind this Mediterranean apocalypse.
And to really get the magnitude, you have to start with the ruins themselves, the archaeology of the destruction. We should probably start with Hattusha.
The capital of the Hittite Empire. I mean, this place was famously impenetrable. You could still see the remnants today, these towering double walls, over 100 towers, those massive gateways carved with lions. This was a superpower.
It was a superpower of the age, rivaling Egypt. So when we dig into those ruins, the evidence is chilling.
What does it tell us?
Right above the ancient floors, archaeologists find this thin but pervasive black layer. It's ash, charred wood, scorched rubble. And it dates right to the end of the 13th century BC, right around 1200 BC.
So a massive fire.
A firestorm. The destruction was savage, unrelenting, and total. And after that, nothing. Hattusha became a ghost town for centuries.
And this wasn't just something that happened to the Hittites. The same layer of sudden, violent destruction, it shows up everywhere, right?
Everywhere. Dozens of locations. Alakahuyuk, a major Hittite site, same thing, covered in ash and rubble. And then, maybe even more tragically, at a fortified town called Karagalan, they found bronze arrowheads just littering the earth.
Wow.
And the bones of men, women, and children, just left lying in the streets, unburied. This wasn't just a military defeat, this was an eradication.
It's hard to imagine, which makes you wonder how the memory of this catastrophe even survived, especially since the region plunged into a dark age.
Well, one answer is through stories. Through epic poetry.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We have the Iliad and the Odyssey, stories attributed to Homer, passed down orally through the Greek Dark Ages that followed the collapse, and they tell of a huge, devastating war, the destruction of Troy.
And this wasn't just myth. I mean, the leader of the Greeks was supposedly Agamemnon of Mycenae, a real city-state, a military stronghold of maybe 30,000 people. You can still see its defenses.
The Cyclopean walls.
Yeah.
They're so massive that later Greeks thought only giants could have built them.
Exactly. And Troy itself. Well, archaeology confirms it was a grand, fortified city. We're talking 9-meter-high walls, towers 18 meters tall. And crucially, the ruins show it was attacked and burned, not just once, but twice, right at the end of the 13th century. It fits the timeline perfectly.
And it wasn't just fire there either, was it?
No. They found bronze arrowheads scattered around and human remains in the streets, which just reinforces that image of desperate, last-stand violence you read about in the epics. These myths are probably the hazy, terrible memory of the fires that ended the Bronze Age.
Which brings us to the big question. How could a system with such powerful, fortified states just fail all at once?
Well, what's fascinating here is how connected they all were. We tend to think of the ancient world as these isolated kingdoms, but the source material is clear. The Eastern Mediterranean societies, Mycenaean Greece, Egypt, the Hittites, Assyria, they were as entangled as we are today, maybe even more so.
Absolutely. The Mediterranean Sea wasn't a barrier, it was a highway for trade. And we have, incredible proof of that globalized network.
The Ulu Burun shipwreck, found off the coast of Turkey, dating to about 1300 BC. If you want to understand the Bronze Age economy in one snapshot, that's it.
The cargo manifest is just unbelievable. You have 10 tons of copper ingots and 1 ton of tin.
The exact 10-to-1 ratio you need for bronze.
Precisely. But then there's so much more. Ebony, elephant and hippo tusks, olives, pomegranates, gold, pottery, and a golden scarab with the name of Queen Nefertiti on it.
All on one ship. Those goods came from at least 7 different lands. And it wasn't just goods flowing back and forth, it was people. Minoan artists painting in Egyptian palaces. The last king of Ugarit was married to a Hittite princess.
So it was a single, highly specialized, interdependent ecosystem.
Yes, but the foundation of that whole system was surprisingly fragile. We call it the Bronze Age for a reason. Everything, their weapons, their tools, their chariots, depended on bronze.
And bronze needs copper, which was fairly common, but it also needs tin.
And tin was the bottleneck. It was incredibly rare, sourced almost entirely from one place, the Badakhshan region of Afghanistan. Yes. So that tin had to travel thousands of miles on donkey caravans, probably, along what would become the Silk Road, just to reach Mesopotamia, and then it was shipped out to everyone else. The military might of Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenaean. It all depended on this incredibly long, fragile supply chain. One source called it as fragile as a cobweb.
And the historian Carol Bell said the strategic importance of tin was probably not that different from crude oil today.
Exactly. So if that pipeline breaks, the whole military-industrial civilization breaks with it.
And that fragility, that brings us right to the big debate. The competing theories about what could cause such a system-wide shock.
Because if one society had fallen, the others might have been fine, but they all fell together.
So let's get into it. There are 3 main forces historians argue over: invaders, new technology, and the environment. Let's start with the classic scapegoat, the Sea Peoples.
Right, the name itself sounds terrifying, doesn't it? They were this mysterious, fearsome horde that arrived by sea. The Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III recorded their devastation. He said no land could stand before their arms.
And the fall of Ugarit gives us that tragic human story. We found the last king's final letter, a clay tablet begging Cyprus for help. He wrote, "All of my troops and chariots are stationed in Hatti. The land is abandoned."
Just imagine that. Knowing it's your last chance, and the letter is never even sent. It was found in the kiln, unbaked, in the ruins of his burned palace. Archaeologists found a 2-meter-thick destruction layer there.
But the Sea Peoples weren't some single, unified alien invasion force, were they?
No, not at all. They were a loose confederation of different groups. The Egyptians named them the Danuna, the Chakar, the Peliset. And what's crucial is that some of these groups, like the Shardana, had actually served as mercenaries for Egypt before.
So they weren't exactly strangers.
No. Which opens the door to Theory B, that this wasn't just an outside invasion. The chaos allowed opportunistic neighbors to strike.
The internal rot idea. So, for example, when Mycenae was wiped out, it was probably their northern neighbors, the Dorians, who seized the opportunity while the Mycenaeans were weakened.
Exactly. And Hattusha, the Hittite capital, is way inland. It wasn't the Sea Peoples who sacked it. It was likely the Phrygians, migrating south, taking advantage of the famine and political chaos.
You see the same pattern in Babylon, right?
A perfect example. The Kassites had ruled for 500 years, but they depended on their allies. When those allies were busy fighting for their lives or had already collapsed, Babylon was vulnerable. The Elamite king just walked in, sacked the city, and stole the statue of their main god, Marduk. It was devastating.
So the system was already breaking down, and regional powers just delivered the final blows. But what enabled these smaller groups to suddenly challenge the superpowers?
That brings us to the big technological shift. Theory C, the great leveler, iron.
The start of the Iron Age.
Right. Bronze is easy to work. Tin melts at a low temperature. Iron, on the other hand, needs advanced furnaces to get over 1500 degrees Celsius. It's much harder. But once that knowledge how to turn iron into steel by mixing it with carbon, once that spread, it changed everything.
Because iron ore is everywhere. It's cheap.
Exactly. Suddenly, tribal societies, mountain people, smaller kingdoms, they could all afford cutting-edge weaponry. One of our sources compares it to the AK-47 today. It completely destabilized the old imperial monopolies on weapons. The old empires, with their expensive chariot armies, were suddenly vulnerable to massed infantry.
Okay, so the trade web is breaking, and a new technology is empowering the enemies of the great empires. But now let's talk about what might have been the ultimate root cause, the trigger for everything else, the environment.
There's a lot of evidence that the climate underwent a sudden rapid change. The lands became dry and arid. We have data from pollen analysis, deep-sea sediment cores, oxygen isotopes. They all confirm a severe, multi-decade drought hit the region in the 13th and 12th centuries BC.
And we have written proof of the famine. That same Hittite queen, she sent a desperate message to the pharaoh in Egypt. "I have no grain in my lands." The kings weren't just losing wars. They couldn't feed their people.
And this probably wasn't just a regional drought. It might have been tied to a massive global event.
The Hekla 3 hypothesis.
The Hekla 3 volcano in Iceland. Around 1100 BC, it erupted and threw something like 7.5 cubic kilometers of rock into the atmosphere. It would have created a dark shroud that lasted for years.
And we can see that in the tree rings, right? From Ireland to the US.
Clear as day. You see 18 to 20 years of stunted growth, of cooling across the whole northern hemisphere. Now just imagine the human cost of that. The sun is pale, your crops are failing year after year.
You'd think the gods had abandoned you, that your king had failed. And with cheap iron weapons suddenly available, you have the perfect recipe for massive internal uprisings.
And this allows us to reframe the sea peoples entirely. Were they just invaders? Or were they maybe climate refugees?
That's a fascinating reinterpretation. Instead of monsters, they're desperate people fleeing starvation. From Sardinia, maybe Sicily. Their crops fail, they band together, get on ships, and just set sail to find anywhere that isn't cursed.
They start with piracy, looting to survive. And as they roam, their numbers grow with more desperate people until they become this army of the sea, a huge, diverse force with no single leader, just roaming in search of a new home.
A roving band of desperate, well-armed refugees. And this force finally met its match in the one place left that could resist: Egypt.
Egypt is the crucial survivor. Mycenaean and the Hittites vanished. Assyria survived by retreating into its heartland, but Egypt, with its long coastline, was incredibly vulnerable.
And its fate rested on one man, Ramses III. He knew his chariot armies would be useless in the marshy Nile Delta.
Which is exactly where the Sea Peoples planned to attack. They gambled everything on a combined land and sea invasion. But Ramses anticipated it. He laid an ambush.
As their fleet came around the bend, we're talking maybe 10,000 oars, Ramses unleashed hell. He'd hidden archers and spearmen in the reeds along the banks.
It was a trap. The carvings at Medinet Habu show it all. Arrows raining down, the Egyptian navy using grappling hooks to overturn their ships. The inscriptions are graphic. Men were killed and made into heaps from tail to head.
So Ramses won. He saved Egypt.
He did. He boasted in the Harris Papyrus that the Sea Peoples were made ashes. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. Egypt now stood alone in a completely devastated world. All those trade routes were broken. The economy just collapsed.
And the consequences hit home fast. We have evidence of the first known worker strike in history in Ramses' 29th year. The artisans building the royal tombs, they weren't getting their food rations.
Egypt went into a steep decline over the next 80 years. The pharaoh's power dwindled and the priests took over. And as a final note on the Sea Peoples, one group, the Peliset, did survive. They settled in southern Palestine and became known to history as the Philistines.
So after all that, what does this deep dive mean for you looking back? It seems the collapse wasn't due to one single cause. It was a perfect storm, a convergence of stresses.
Environmental catastrophe, technological shifts, and opportunistic warfare, all striking a system that was too interdependent. Its greatest strength, its interconnectedness, became its greatest weakness.
The core lesson here seems to be about the fragility of civilization. This shows you that once that kind of chaos starts, once war and violence are unleashed, containing the consequences is almost impossible.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. And finally, just think about the human experience of it all. Imagine going from a golden age of civilization, of high art and diplomacy, to a world of rubble and ruin, all within a single lifetime. That feeling of apocalypse survived for centuries only in the hazy, terrible memory of poems like the Iliad. It really gives you a profound perspective on how thin the veneer of civilization can be.
Stone by stone, the towers grew tall. Echoes of power in the mighty hall. 1,000 banners in the golden light, marching forward to claim the night. Rise to the heavens, they cry.